back, baby.
Offense, you know what to do.
It's football time in Tennessee.
Huh?
Yes,
Get this Tennessee.
What is up, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the 1796 Sports Podcast. A victorious episode as the Vols prevail in the third Saturday in October, notching a 24-17 win over the Crimson Tide. We don't give a damn about the whole state of Alabama. Bryce, what was your main takeaways from the enormous victory the Vols got?
Yeah, so starting off, my main takeaway has got to be it's impressive as hell that we can play far from our best game and still beat Alabama.
Yep.
I think, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's an impressive win. It's gutsy, it's ballsy. It shows a lot about where this program is, but I honestly think this says just as much about Alabama as it does us. Like how far they've fallen from their peak. And I just think it was incredibly impressive because if you think that, if you hear that Tennessee beat Alabama, you're probably going to assume that Nico finally got it together and he threw for 330 yards. And it was just like 2022, where it was, you have to score 50 points to win. And that's literally the exact opposite of what happened.
Yeah.
So that's impressive to me that it did not go how you would think an Alabama win would need to go, and we still won.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Tennessee obviously played in the first half at least. I would probably put it like a D- on offense, because you were moving the ball, but then you turned it over. But adding on to your point, if we don't turn the ball over 3 times in the first half and we hit half of the, passes that Nico missed or the wide receivers dropped, this game isn't even close. That gives me a lot of confidence moving forward because, again, I know I've said it the last 2 weeks. I don't think the offense is far away. It's maddening, frustrating, and I know Heupel and Nico are the maddest about it. I'm sure the entire offense, actually. But it's not like they're far away. So that, as you said, gives me confidence. We have not even came close to our best.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I listened to some post-game stuff, some recap stuff, and a lot of people were saying that, Tennessee still doesn't look right. Tennessee still hasn't gotten the offense figured out. And it's the number one thing I saw people were saying were that's not going to beat Georgia. It's okay, well, first of all, beating Alabama still means something. It's not like we did this to Southern Miss or something. Well, plus, like you said, how many points were left on the board? We easily could have scored 45, 46 points, easily. I mean, there's the 2, which we'll get into, but there's the 2 touchdowns, at least 2 touchdowns that Nico just missed. And then 3 turnovers. And that's kind of my point. This is far from the best that Tennessee can play, which is encouraging to me because, if you can beat Bama when you're playing at probably 75% at best, then what does that say when you finally do get it figured out?
Yeah.
And this is the thing. Sorry, real quick. We lost the turnover battle. We lost the time of possession battle. And we still beat Alabama. I don't think people realize how crazy that is. If you said that even a year ago, you're only going to score 24 points. You're going to throw 3 turnovers. You're going to be scoreless in the first half. That sounds like we got blown out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, all of that is true, but we're saying Tennessee is far from their best, but before I give what I thought was my main takeaway is, before I say that, I mean, Tennessee has been excellent situationally in the last 2 weeks. When you're talking about the defense bowing up in the red zone, holding people to field goals, or just outright turning the ball over. This 2 weeks in a row we forced turnover when the other team had first and goal. And then the offense comes through in the fourth quarter, in the second half. Like, they've been excellent situationally. But my main takeaway from yesterday is Tennessee beat Alabama's brains in the trenches. Alabama averaged 2.2 yards per rush on 34 attempts for 75 yards. Tennessee averaged 5.4 yards per rush for 220 yards. Just absolute domination on both sides of the ball where it really matters, especially in the SEC.
Yeah, which is also a weird thing to say when you're playing Alabama, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but that's the world we live in now because Nick Saban does not reside, does not have a, well, I guess he does still have an office in Tuscaloosa, but it's not the head coaching office. It's his honorary, we're going to suck you off a little bit office. So that's just the reality now. I think when you can go out and do that, like you said, against Alabama, what makes me think that we can't do something similar against Georgia?
I mean, I think if you play the exact game you played against Alabama, you probably do lose to Georgia. Like, with the turnovers and missing, I don't think there's as much of a margin of error against Georgia.
For sure.
I think, well, for one, I think Carson Beck's better than Jalen Milroe.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about this, but I don't think Jalen Milroe's healthy.
I mean, I was telling you last night, just while we were talking about the game over the phone, he misfired on at least 10 passes that were like relatively open.
Well, he had, I agree. He had one that was egregious. Like, in the fourth quarter, they were trying to drive, and it wasn't an impactful play. Like, you probably won't remember it, but he had a guy like out, like an out route, you know, by the sideline, and it looked like he was wincing in pain as he threw the ball, and it was like 20 yards away from its intended target. So I'm not making excuses for him. Like, he played like ass, but he has fallen off a cliff. Like 3 weeks ago, he was like the Heisman front runner, and now people want him benched.
Yeah.
Like, let's just get right. Well, did you want to give your main takeaway, or was that, like, did you have anything else to add?
The winning in the trenches.
In the trenches.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, I wanted to give you a stat to back that up. And then I want you to answer this about how you think our offensive line played. But, yeah, our offensive line allowed 3 sacks and 4 tackles for loss. Meanwhile, Alabama's offensive line allowed 3 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. So our offensive line definitely performed better than theirs did. They also had more penalties than we did. John Campbell did have a couple bad penalties again, but at the end of it, I mean, it is what it is. I thought he played pretty good other than that. What about you?
So just the offensive line as a whole, I mean, it's really like it has been for the offense, you know, not just the line, it's a tale of two halves. We couldn't get much going on the ground in the first half, and I think 2 of those sacks came in the first half too. And then the second half, we got the run game going, and then the offense flourished. I mean, that's what it comes down to for Tennessee's offense a lot of the times. I know we've already touched on it. Nico was missing people. But when the run game is going, it's a lot easier to move the ball in a Josh Heupel offense. So at the end of the day, they were able to block well enough, talking about run blocking, to go out and be effective. So I will give the offensive line a good report for the first time in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unheard of for Alabama to completely control the line of scrimmage and win games because your quarterback's on his back all game. So the fact that I don't think they have the dudes up front that they normally do, but they're still damn good. And anytime you're playing an SEC opponent and you keep your quarterback upright for much of the night, then you've got to feel pretty good about it.
Well, to your point, about what you just said. What was the narrative for Alabama's roster going into this season? The most talented
The most
roster.
talented roster, yeah. The
So
deepest D line in the SEC.
yeah, I mean because they had that recruiting class. I guess it would have been Saban's last recruiting class in 2022, or I guess it would have been the start of 2023. But that was touted as the best recruiting class ever. So I don't really think it's
Wow.
a talent issue for Alabama. Just talking about them specifically, I think it's a lot to do with not having Nick Saban. I mean, Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. I think last night was his 13th or 14th loss in his career, but he's obviously having an adjustment period in the SEC. But what did you want to
I
move
do
on
want to
to
get
next?
into that too, but
Yeah.
we'll spend the first half talking about Tennessee though because they deserve it.
Hmm.
Who was your player of the game?
So I had so many names going through my mind, but when in quotation marks, the best wide receiver in college football is targeted 18 times and he catches 5 of them, or I guess it was
He caught 8 of them.
8 of them. Yeah, sorry. I have to give it to Jermod McCoy.
100%.
And like I said, I'll talk about the other players too, but the guy who deserves it for me is definitely our boy Mod. I mean, he came through like we talked about on a Thursday night. He made that huge interception, and then Alabama went away from him, and Ricky Gibson was checking him most of the night. And I know he also went down for with an injury for a good portion of the game too. But I mean, he was just dynamite when he was checking him, and I think that cannot be understated how important that performance was.
So 2 things there. I think I agree with you 100%. It's obviously Mod. He is a dog. And I don't know if you know this. You know he's only 19.
Yeah, he's a sophomore. I mean, that's
The-
awesome for Tennessee's future.
Can you imagine how good he'll be in a year or two? Like, the dude is incredible. I think from a pure talent perspective, I think he might be the best player on the team other than Dylan Sampson.
Yeah,
I think he really might be like the best player on the team already. He's incredible, but I did want to say, I know you said like in quotations, but I don't think it's in quote. I mean, I think Ryan Williams is the best receiver in the country already. I think he's incredible. I think it goes to show you it's more of a testament to how good Jermod covered him and how bad Jalen Milroe was.
yeah.
Like,
I mean, and just sorry to interrupt you, but even when he caught the ball against McCoy, he was right
Mhm.
there and made him feel it whenever he tackled him. I know there was one play where he speared him in the back too, and
Yeah,
then
that picture was funny.
like I said, the other times he was catching it on Jermod, he was like body slamming him. Like he was not even when he caught it, he was not making it easy on the young lad.
Well, that's what I like about him because he even when he does give up a catch, he actually can tackle on like a lot of corners.
100%.
Also want to give a shout out, and I know you'll agree with me here. I want to give a shout out to Will Brooks. I mean, can you imagine how good that felt to seal the game against the team that you grew up 60 miles away from that didn't even give you a look? Like,
I mean, it's an incredible story.
that's literally like something movies are made out of. Like that was an incredible. Couldn't have wrote a better ending. And he should be on scholarship because, as you mentioned to me in the pre-show, he was the highest rated PFF defender on our team. So it's not like, he's got a lot of hype for his 2 interceptions this year, but like he's actually playing decent. He doesn't just make splashy plays. Like he's actually pretty decent all game.
Yeah, he's not a Trayvon Diggs type, where when he's not making the splashy play, he's pretty terrible. He's and another gigantic play on that quarterback sneak. Milroe would have scored if he didn't shoelace tackle him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, where he like it looked like just a sneak up the middle, but he like took it through the A gap and there was like nobody there but Will Brooks. Yeah.
I mean, that 7 points off the board because of Will Brooks. And like you said, a kid from Birmingham who no doubt Alabama didn't even know about. Like to be on the roster at Tennessee for 4 years, to be coached by Jeremy Pruitt for one of them. I mean, whoever, like, again, it's, not just Will Brooks, whoever stayed through that is a true volunteer. But for him to do that and then break through on special teams and then break through last year at the end of the year as a starting safety, and then now halfway through his fifth year senior season to be making these kind of plays is just outstanding. And like you said, give the kid a scholarship.
Yeah, it's a true underdog story. It's awesome. And I think it's fair to say now, halfway through the season, it's fair to say the secondary is not worse. Not by a long shot. I mean, Danico Slaughter and everybody else. I mean, Kamal Haddon, everybody that left, everybody was so worried about the secondary taking Rucker being, Rucker's gone. McCullough is in the NFL, Haddon's in the NFL. Like, all these guys left, and everybody, it would have been easy to think like this, oh my God, this is not good. Well, it turns out that the guys that were already on the roster that weren't playing are actually pretty good. And Jermod McCoy was the steal of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And I also think that a lot of people owe Willie Martinez an apology, to be honest, because it turns out the guys he had last year just sucked.
Yeah, I'll raise my hand on that one.
I mean, we all thought it. I mean, but it turns out he didn't really have a lot to work with. I mean, oh, and by the way, none of the guys that left are doing that good in their new places either. Slaughter got burnt like toast all night last night. Like, it's not like that was a huge miss by us. But it's good to see.
Yeah, for sure. And then I wrote this player down just as a candidate for player of the game. He played solid, just besides what I'm talking about. But how big was Boo Carter baiting? I don't remember which receiver it was for Alabama.
Yeah, it was Kendrick Law.
He baited Kendrick Law into a stupid ass penalty that put a 4th and 7 to a 4th and 22. And then Kalen DeBoer decided to run a screen pass for some ungodly reason. And that, basically made it to where Tennessee was already in field goal range. You could spend Alabama's timeouts pretty easily. And then Will Brooks made the play. So I want to shout out Boo Carter too. Sometimes the game within the game matters. And that just goes to prove it. When you can bait into somebody into doing that as a freshman, to have the gall and the get under the skin factor.
Well, listen, aura and swagger matter.
Absolutely.
And Boo has definitely, I mean, he's been damn good too. Don't get me wrong, but in swagger that he brought to the secondary was sorely lacking last year. And I don't want that to be understated.
Absolutely. But like you said, the secondary as a whole is, it's borderline elite. I think, the more for sure elite part of the defense is the front seven. But it's when you have a guy like McCoy, you have another solid sophomore in Ricky Gibson at the other corner spot. You have a true freshman in Boo Carter. You have Christian Harrison when Boo's not in the game. I mean, probably the weakest point. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Probably the weakest point is Turrentine, and he's not that bad either. So the secondary cannot be talked about enough to how well they played last night and last week and throughout the whole year. And I just want to say this about the defense before I talk about my other candidates that I almost picked for player of the game on the offensive side of the ball. But we have to remember, just talking about the defense, we don't have Keenan Peely anymore. And it looked like they did not make any type of drop-off.
No, T-Lander played great. Arian Carter played great.
Perry.
Yeah, T-Lander had a half sack too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say Peely's not missed, because he is, but whenever your green dot linebacker goes out, that's a concern. And they responded by holding Alabama to 17 points. And the middle of the field wasn't exposed.
Nope. I mean, that really the only point it was on the drive that Alabama their last touchdown drive when the Alabama went down the field in like 6 plays. They had a drag or post across the middle that got them down to the goal line, but that's the only time I remember the middle of the field being wide open.
Well, that's going to happen too when you're playing
Yeah.
against. I mean, Alabama has elite athletes. Like they're going to get open at some point. I think probably the most underrated part of what the defense did though is spying Milroe. Milroe's legs were a non-factor, a complete non-factor. He had 11 yards.
Yep.
Like that is the key to the game, in my opinion, because he can take a game over with his leg. There's two ways Milroe beats you. He hits those deep bombs that he didn't hit Saturday, and he makes plays with his legs, and he didn't either. So that was really impressive to me because it wouldn't be weird to see him get 80 yards on the ground, and it other than like one good play, it was a non-factor.
Yeah, I mean, me and Jim were all over this in the summer, just doing our previews. Jalen Milroe is a running back who can throw a deep ball, and Tennessee took out both of those factors.
To be fair, Bill O'Brien said that, and everybody said he was the dumbest motherfucker on earth.
Well, it's turning out to be true in their first 4 conference games, besides the Georgia game in the first quarter. Like, I mean, I say what you want. Like, Bill O'Brien's a respected coach, and he was all over it too. And when a decent defense can take away those two things that Milroe does the best, they only score 17 points. So, but talking about the offensive standouts, of course you have to start with Dylan Sampson, another, typical Sampson performance this year. 26 carries, 139 yards, 5.3 a carry, a long of 36, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's basically what we've come to expect from Dylan Sampson.
Yeah, Dylan Sampson's incredible. I mean, it's almost like a shock if he doesn't go over 100 yards. He's the most consistent offensive player by far, like on a week-to-week basis. He just brings it every day. He always looks like a dog. Juice Davis, said he's just built different. Like he just
absolutely
he just comes to play every day like he's got something to prove. You can't really coach that. Dylan Sampson's amazing. Yeah, I love him. I also think that I know he doesn't get a lot of carries because he doesn't need to, but Deshaun Bishop looks good too. Like I don't know what it is, but our stable of running backs just seems to be like never ending.
Yeah, I mean, before the season, if you told me Selden would be a non-factor through 7 games, I would be really worried about the running back position, but Bishop has stepped in admirably, and it's a shame his best play of the night got taken down by a ticky-tack holding. But it is what it is. But moving on to another standout for me, a guy that people wanted to bench at halftime of last week and halftime of Saturday.
Oh, God.
Nico Iamaleava is a winner, and that's all there is to it. He's making the damn plays as a redshirt freshman that Joe Milton didn't make last year. The winning plays, the throw to Thornton is an NFL throw if I've ever seen one. That's something that Chris Collinsworth would slob all over Patrick Mahomes for.
So just to cut you in real quick, Josh, I was listening to Josh Pate today, and he was at the game, and he said that throwing that throw that he made to Thornton, most college quarterbacks couldn't do that with the crow hop from the pocket.
No.
Like that was just an insanely athletic play.
And we said it last week, Nico looks the best when he's outside of the pocket. He looks the best when he's improvising or the play breaks down or he's rolling out. And the biggest play of the game was in that exact scenario. And then the winning plays to Brazzle, the winning play to pump fake a linebacker and then run 25, 30 yards down the field to get to a 1st and goal. Like, that's the reason I told you during the game, those kind of plays are the reason I'm never going to think to bench Nico, because there's a potential for him to flash like that. And when you're winning games against your two biggest rivals in back-to-back weeks, when he's not even close to playing his best, that leads me to believe he's a born winner, and that's all there is to it.
That's for sure. I mean, he doesn't lack the confidence and he doesn't lack the natural talent. It's just about getting it all together. It doesn't ever seem like he gets too low, and I definitely know he doesn't get too high. So I definitely have to agree with you. Like, if you look at the box score, you wouldn't necessarily think he played very good. I mean, but that's the difference. Like, when you actually watch the game, you see those intangible things you're talking about, like his will to win. I think it's hard to coach, like the Samson thing. And, like you said, he's a redshirt freshman. He's not going to hit every throw. But I think the thing that is encouraging about that, I mean, you could say it's a bad thing, but I think of it as a good thing. It's not that our offense can't be good or like we can't, hit the plays. We're just not doing it right now for whatever reason. It's not that he doesn't have the ability to throw the ball deep or it would be more concerning to me if the receivers were just getting no separation.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
That's not the problem. Like I told you before this game, I told you in our Alabama preview that you can get open. Like Alabama has receivers running wide open every week. And that was the case again this week. Like if you're playing Alabama, you will have receivers wide open. And you just have to take advantage of it when it happens. And again, we didn't even really do that. Like it could have been way worse than it was.
100%. And like you said, and like I've harped on since the Arkansas game ended, we're not far away on offense. Like those misfires, I really think it comes down to him, whether it's him being worried about to be getting blindsided, whether it's just being a second or two off, whether it's him just overthrowing them, and it's simply all his fault.
I mean, think of it like this: two throws are better placed, and it's a 41-17 game.
Yeah, I mean in the first quarter we had a streak to Brazel down the sideline he overthrew, and we had the 1-0 to Squirrel over the middle that he overthrew, and then like I was telling my brother who was at the game with me in the first half, Nico's either missing them or the wide receivers are dropping it. Like there was at least five drops by our wide receivers, and Nico's stats you probably can add, at least 5 more completions and at least 50 more yards.
Well,
so
this is the only negative thing I'm gonna say, from like my negative takeaway from the game. It's Squirrel. What is up with Squirrel White? I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he's not fully healthy, because a couple weeks ago we thought he broke his damn collarbone. So yeah. I'm going to go I'm going to say he's not healthy because he just doesn't – he looks like a jag at best. And we've seen him be like a really good SEC receiver before. And this year he looks like he shouldn't even be playing. And he didn't record a stat in the game. So he's accounted for a lot of those drops too.
Yeah. And if we're going to talk about, a negative wide receiver topic, we got to, promote the good. I mean, the 2 plays that the receivers finally made won you the game. Thornton catching that ball on his fingertips really down the sideline, and then Brazel diving in the end zone to get the game-winning touchdown. And then Brew, I mean, a possession receiver masterclass, 6 receptions for 80 yards, mostly over the middle. Like, he was awesome. The three receivers that recorded catches were awesome.
Yep. Brew is just Mr. Reliable. And that's what we missed down the stretch last year. It's just a chain mover.
100%. And like you said, you mentioned on Thursday, get the tight ends more involved. We had a nice first down pickup to Ethan Davis. And then he had another catch, and Stays got involved with the catch for 5 yards as well. I mean, that's better than what we had seen the last 2 weeks. So I think with the bye week coming up, talking about the whole offense now, you can start to add another wrinkle. You can get in better sync, talking about Nico with his receivers. You can hone in. You can rep it until your arm falls off with every one of your targets. Like I think coming out of the bye week and playing a down Kentucky team who just got obliterated by Florida, you have a chance for a really, really good offensive performance, and you're at home again. So it's, I know we've been saying it. I said it before Florida, I said it before Alabama. The offense is close, but I think it is so close to being the powder keg that we want it to be. I mean, not up to 2022 level, but like I said, if you're scoring above 30 points, it's going to be nearly impossible for anybody in your schedule to beat you, except Georgia.
I do have one more possible point of concern. Are you worried at all about Max Gilbert?
I mean, the both of those field goals he missed, the 53-yarder wasn't too far off. I mean, that is close to his limit. And but the second one, that just looked like he was lacking confidence. But then he comes out and nails a field goal to, put the game to where Alabama had to score a touchdown to even tie it. So if he would have missed that last one, I'd be concerned. But I think he's going to be all right.
And it wasn't a gimme either. I mean, a 40-plus yard field goal is not a gimme. Like that was – I was incredibly nervous because I was thinking, I think every Tennessee fan at the time was thinking when he lined up for that kick, if he misses this, we're going to lose. Because they would have great field position and only down by 4. Like, I was nervous, but he came through when it mattered, so.
100%. You want to get in – I actually want to mention one more player. James Pierce had one of his best performances of the season with getting home for 2 sacks and then producing 9 pressures.
See, he was just waiting for the lights. He was just waiting for the bright lights.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like why I wasn't concerned with it early in the season when he wasn't getting more than 10 snaps against Chattanooga. Like, who cares? As long as he's going to do it against Florida and Alabama, I'm fine.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't think – I mean, he's definitely probably hurt his draft stock this year, but we're winning games and he seems happy and he's healthy, so who cares?
I mean, I wouldn't even say he's hurting his draft stock. I think he's a freak, an athletic freak. And
well, he's going to test crazy, so you're probably right.
So, yeah. Do you have anything else Tennessee specific before we just talk about, the state of Alabama football at the moment?
I mean, I think we nailed all the standouts we needed to nail. One more standout, though, that doesn't get talked about is our punter is a badass. So,
oh, my God, yes.
I mean, it sounds stupid, but, like, he literally is a weapon. He had 4 punts. 2 of them were pinned inside the 20, and none of them were touchbacks. That's incredible for a college punter.
Yep. And the one where we had stalled out after that terrible holding penalty on Brazel, and he pins them inside the 5, and then we get the ball back and score on our next possession. I mean, without that punt and that beautiful placement, like, who knows what would have happened if Alabama has the ball on the 20 instead of the 5.
Exactly. I mean, it makes all the difference, especially a team like Alabama where, like, one play and, they can go the distance.
Yeah, and when you're, in games like these, like you have been in the last 3 weeks, the punter becomes 10 times more important, and he's coming through in a huge way. So,
yeah. I mean, yeah. So do you want to get into the Alabama stuff now? Because I have a lot to say.
You have the floor.
So, number one, if I was an Alabama fan, I would be pissed. And not for the reason that most of them are pissed. I would be pissed because, one, my team is incredibly undisciplined. And 2, this isn't the same Alabama team that I would have been accustomed to. And I think there's a lot of blame to go around. As someone who despises Alabama, I'm trying to be objective as possible. But I think it's fair to say the Kendrick Law penalty where Boo was in his head rent-free,
mm-hmm.
that doesn't happen under a Saban team. And if it does, he's not sniffing the field again.
No.
That he would have been yanked off the field and he would sit next game if he even did it. And the fact that I haven't checked this, I need to check it, but I can almost guarantee you they never got penalized this much under Saban.
Well, I mean, 2 years ago they had a similar penalty output, but I think that when you're talking about the penalties, and in Neyland Stadium, you have to take into account the crowd too. But like you said, it's like a different. I mean, obviously it's a different program now without Saban, but like you said, if that happened and Saban was on the sideline, Saban would have spent a minute and a half ripping him a new ass, and you didn't see that from Kalen DeBoer.
Well, and also another thing that's not like a typical Alabama team. Well, two things. One, the secondary sucks, and two, the running backs are Jags. Like Jam Miller and Justice Haynes are not very good. Haynes averaged 2.8 yards per carry, and Miller averaged 3.5. And yes, Tennessee's run defense is very good, but they're not difference makers at all. They don't have Jahmyr Gibbs and Najee Harris and Derrick Henry, or they don't have those type of playmakers out of the backfield anymore. And, I know running isn't as big of a emphasis as it used to be, but it's still important, especially for a team like Alabama. I mean, look at Tennessee, for example. If we had Jam Miller instead of Dylan Sampson, we'd probably have two more losses.
Yeah,
like
100%.
That makes a big difference. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, like, after not even one full season that somebody isn't the answer. But DeBoer, the vibe that I get from DeBoer is he wants to be the players' best friends, and he wants them to like think he's cool, because that is an undisciplined team, and that was never a problem for the last 17 years.
I mean, to that point, I go back to 2 weeks ago when Malachi Moore threw a hissy fit when Vanderbilt was in victory formation, throwing his mouthpiece and kicking the ball and refusing to leave the field when the coaches wanted to put him on the bench. You can't claim to be a player's coach when you give a star favorable treatment, because other players will see that and be like, okay, I can do whatever the hell I want. Like, it looks like the inmates are running the asylum.
To be fair, though, I do think, I mean, he should have been punished for that, but I think, and this is my main point with Alabama, especially on defense, it kind of seems like Malachi Moore is about the only one that cares.
I mean,
like,
yeah.
I don't know if you got that vibe, but at the end of the game, like, they were hanging. There was a lot of hanging their head. It just didn't look like a typical Alabama team. It was weird.
Well, I mean, I guess that's what happens when a program that is used to, I mean, this was a stat coming out of the game. The first time Alabama has 2 losses before November since Saban's first year.
And it's also the first time they've lost to both Tennessee teams in a season since 1984.
Yeah. I mean,
so Kalen DeBoer's hitting all kinds of records. He's breaking all kinds of records, 40-year plus records in his first year. That's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, this is, we talked about it in January when Saban retired and they ended up hiring DeBoer. Like, I felt it was a good hire. And I still think it very well could be, but there was obviously going to be a drop-off. And it just comes down to I'm not even going to say one of the best coach in college football history, and then you're replacing him with a guy from the Pac-12 coming into the SEC for the first time. There was always going to be something like this happen, and I'm happy as hell that Tennessee was one of the ones to expose them. And that's not to say I think Alabama's a terrible team. Like I said earlier, the narrative going into the season is they have the most talented roster in college football. And it may be true, but that also ties into the fact that Kalen DeBoer is not doing a very good job in a lot of coaching aspects right now. Like I said, going forward on 4th and 22 and then running a screen pass on your own 15 and ensuring that Tennessee's in field goal range, I've not seen anything that dumb when you have 3 timeouts in a while.
Yeah, I don't understand what the point of that was, because the play call, like, if he would have gone with a deep shot and it just didn't, I mean, it still would have been stupid, but it looked like the purpose of that screen was just to give the punter more room.
Well, that was the fourth down play.
I know. Or, yeah, you're right. But, like, what – I don't get – like, what were you trying to get yards for? Like, I don't know. It was weird. Like, that was a very weird – I don't know what. Because, these coaches don't make the – like, they have people in their headset telling them either to go for it or not to go for it. And even Greg McElroy, like, on the broadcast was like, what are they – like, what are you doing? Like, you have 3 times – like, why are you doing this? And it's not like their defense – I was trying to think of a rationale behind it. Like, maybe he trusted his defense, but the defense didn't play that good. So I don't know what it was.
Well, even if you trust your defense, like,
you're conceding at least 3 points.
Yeah, and you're conceding your last 3 timeouts too. And the 3 points. You could have conceded the 3 timeouts and not given up a field goal if you just punt the ball. Like, the only thing that I thought of in the moment was maybe they thought Tennessee was coming with an all-out blitz from the front 7, and there would be room for the screen to get enough yards, but that clearly didn't happen. So it's still a ridiculous play call. But just talking about the big picture, I mean, they were in that situation because they're undisciplined. And I think at that point, when you're not willing to chew out a player and then you compound it by doing that, just asinine play call, it's a different day in Tuscaloosa today.
Yeah, for sure. And something else I wanted to point out, Jalen Milroe's body language is absolutely horrible. Like, how I was mentioning that Nico never gets too high or too low?
Mm-hmm.
Jalen is the complete opposite. I don't know if you could tell in the stadium, but there were a lot of times where the camera would pan to him and he's just sitting on the bench by himself. Like, he wasn't, pumping the crowd up. And I listened to some Alabama podcaster today that actually have a functioning frontal lobe. And they said that there's no leader on that team right now. Like they don't have any, their leadership is non-existent, which you would think it would come from your veteran quarterback, but he's not a leader at all. And a lot of Alabama fans are pissed and want him benched. They say he's all about his stats and stuff, which it's kind of hard to not agree with that. I mean, just from watching him.
Well, another just game plan and strategy point. Why in the world are you throwing the ball 45 times?
Well, because their running backs aren't very good.
But I think, like, I get that point, but you only give them 20 opportunities between them. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me because there was a point when Alabama was up 7-0 in the third quarter, and they had some success on the ground, like 3 straight plays. Like, I think they gained 20-something yards in those 3 plays on the ground, and they go back to passing. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. But to your point about leadership, I think the closest thing to a leader is the guy who threw hissy fit at the end of Vanderbilt. And that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking. Like, yeah, it was childish and embarrassing, but at least he cares.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a different day and in Alabama's program right now. And I heard a podcast today from, like you said, a guy with who has synapses firing in his brain, an Alabama fan, and he was saying, like, one of the main arguments to not bench Milroe is, will the team fall apart? Like, is this Jalen Milroe's team or is this Kalen DeBoer's team?
Well, that's a stupid argument in my opinion, because does losing to Vanderbilt and Tennessee, in the span of 3 weeks, not count as falling apart anyway, at least for their standards?
Well, it was the same type of argument last year, talking about the Joe Milton situation. It would have killed the locker room chemistry. Is it Joe Milton's team or Josh Heupel's team? Like, at some point, you have to make tough decisions. And the dude I was talking about, the Alabama fan I was listening to, was saying, like, Saban made that type of decision in 2017 in the national championship game,
Yeah.
and it worked out perfect for everybody's career moving forward.
Well, you're probably. I mean, at this point, I know with the 12 team, it's a little different, but with 2 losses and you still have to play
LSU,
Missouri, LSU, the Iron Bowl is always tough, even if Auburn sucks. Like, they could very easily end with 3 losses. You're probably not making the playoff. So, and Milroe is gone after this year. So, what's the point? It's the same situation we were in with Milton. You're exactly right.
yeah, but that's about all I got on Alabama. I mean, it's the main point is it's just a different day, and hopefully it leads to a new winning streak in Knoxville against these boys. But I want to talk about unless you have anything else on Bama, the outlook of Tennessee's season moving forward.
Yeah, well, I think if you want to, I wanted to show you the FPI update after this weekend because that's always interesting to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And Tennessee now, after winning that game, so after last week, after beating Florida, the chance to make the playoff, it didn't go up very much because everybody knew Bama and Georgia were still looming, but it was at like 52 or something. After beating Alabama, Tennessee's chance to make the playoff is now 66.8%. And the only 2 teams in the SEC that have better odds are Georgia and Texas. So that's something. I know it's still early. A lot could happen. But that's encouraging. And, Tennessee moved up in the AP poll again, back inside the top 10. So that's also good. But again, like you're saying, there's still a lot of football to be played. None of that matters if you go out and lose to Kentucky after the bye.
100%. And, we touched on it on Thursday night. Like, besides Georgia, it should be pretty easy to get to 10 wins, even with the loss in Athens. But again, this is proven to be one of the craziest college football seasons since 2007, since I was in 3rd grade. And
I mean,
it seems like Giants are going down every week.
That's the thing. Like, if Vanderbilt or Kentucky could beat us, and it wouldn't even be a top 10 most crazy upset of the year.
Mm-mm.
Like, that's what's concerning about it, is anything can happen this season. So you don't want to get too complacent, which I know Vols fans getting complacent is not a problem. Like,
Yeah.
we're never complacent. But what do you think? I mean, what other than Georgia? Let's make that qualifier because that's the obvious. Other than Georgia, what game worries you the most?
I really think it's the game coming out of the bye week. Since we responded so poorly out of the first bye week, I would like to see them come out and really leave no doubt against Kentucky. I mean, if we end up winning that game in any fashion, I'll be happy. But I would really like to see a thorough performance in that game. And I think besides Georgia, that is the one you have to worry about the most. Because I think by the time Vanderbilt rolls around, Diego Pavia, however you say his name,
Pavia.
I think his body will be black and blue just based on how they use the kid. I'm not saying he's bad, but he's going to be banged up by that point. So I think that game isn't as tough as it looked 2 weeks ago. I mean, and Vanderbilt struggled with Ball State last night, but I'm not overlooking Kentucky, not overlooking Mississippi State. Like, you're going to have to play well to win those games. I mean, Mississippi State lost by 10 to Georgia, and then yesterday they lost by, was it 10 to Texas A&M too?
Yeah, like they're not giving up. There's no quit in that team. So,
yeah. I mean, the good news is those 2 SEC, really all your SEC games, for better or worse, besides Georgia, are going to be majority Tennessee fans. So that's good. But talking about what's happened so far, like, if you told me we're 6-1 at the second bye week, and you didn't tell me who we had lost to, I would take that 100% of the time, just based on the outlook before the season. Because I don't think anybody was chalking. Well, I was kind of chalking up the NC State game to a win for a while. I I certainly wasn't chalking up Oklahoma to a win. I actually predicted that as a loss before the season. And
They just fired their offensive coordinator, by the way.
Oklahoma did?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not surprising. That's Heupel's buddy. Maybe we can get him in as an analyst. But, like, I would have traded a loss to Arkansas if you told me we're beating Florida and Bama 100% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think every Vol fan, if you told us at this point in the season, we'd be sitting at 6-1, and our only loss, like everybody would choose to lose to Arkansas and beat Bama, as opposed to beat Arkansas and lose to Bama. Like everybody would choose this.
100%.
It's way better for strength of schedule purposes too, because Arkansas is going to end up barely making a bowl, and Alabama's probably still going to win 9 or 10 games. So,
I mean, yeah, exactly. Like everything that's happened so far, and we touched on it at the start of tonight. Like we're 6-1, have not even sniffed our best football offensively. We know the defense is going to come to play every game, and your hardest game left is the Georgia game, and I'm not writing that up to a loss by any means at all.
I mean, how can you at this point?
Like, I haven't seen enough from Georgia, and I haven't seen enough from Tennessee to say we're going to lose that game 100%. And like 2 years ago, I wasn't extremely confident going into that game, even when we were 8-0. By the time that rolls around, I'll probably feel better about a win this year than I did 2 years ago. But if we fix the issues on offense, if we get in sync, and the defense continues to play like they play, 10-2 is the floor.
Well, if you miss 2 field goals and turn the ball over 3 times, you're not going to beat Georgia.
100%.
I feel comfortable saying that because Georgia's a better coached team, and they're just better. I mean, at this point they are. I mean, I know they lost, but, I mean, how can you argue that at this point? I think Georgia's resume looks pretty damn good. I mean, you have wins over the Clemson. The win over what they did to Clemson is more impressive every week.
Absolutely.
And before yesterday, I would have told you that Texas is pound for pound the best team in college football. So, I mean, that's an impressive resume. Like, they can beat anybody in the country. So,
yep. And the team that we just, played a C-plus game against for the majority of the game and won by 7 against was up by 30 against them. So it's just the craziest year that I can remember. But
I will say this.
Go ahead.
I think I'm not making like a bold statement or anything. Like, obviously, like job security, I'm not saying anything about that. But look, coming out of a bye and losing to Arkansas is bad enough. If you come out of a bye and lose to Kentucky, that's inexcusable, especially after you just beat Alabama. Like that would kill 95% of the positivity that you just gained yesterday.
Absolutely. I mean,
especially because Kentucky looks horrible. Kentucky got thrashed by South Carolina and Florida.
Mm-hmm. When a Tennessee coach loses to Kentucky, since I've been alive, the coach has gotten fired the same year. I mean, I'm not saying it like you said. I'm not saying if we lose to Kentucky, I think Heupel should be fired. But like you said, it would undo a lot of the goodwill he's gained in the last 2 weeks. So it's going to be a different type of challenge for Tennessee, much like the Arkansas game was. What are you going to do off a bye week when you're not at home playing in a rivalry game that is easy to get up for? I know you're in a rivalry game against Kentucky, kinda, but it's a far worse team than even Florida. Like you said, they lost 48-20 to Florida. So it's going to be a point where we learn a lot about the team.
For sure. And I don't think complacency is going to be a problem for this team either, just because I think there's a really good culture and I think there's a lot of really good guys on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really worried about the team putting out a stinker against Kentucky, but it is a worry in the back of my mind that Heupel – surely he learned his lesson at Arkansas. Surely. But I'm praying that Heupel and the coaches aren't just already marking this as a W.
There's no way.
Because Arkansas would beat Kentucky by 2 touchdowns. And, I think that doesn't mean that Kentucky wouldn't beat us if we played our worst, because they would.
Yeah. Like I said, it's just this it's going to be the same challenge you face coming out of the first bye week, except the good news is you have this at home. If this was a odd numbered year and we were playing at Kentucky, I'd be a lot more worried. But since it's at home, I would give Kentucky less than 5% chance to win that game, assuming Tennessee comes out and does what they're supposed to do. But I want to talk about just two things before we get off here tonight, Bryce, that just stuck in my mind from Saturday. 3 things, actually. Number one, on College game day, Nick Saban made it a point to say that
Now take your victory lap. I know where this is going.
I know. He made it a point to say that he'd never had trouble getting his players up for the Tennessee game, but he sometimes had trouble getting his players up for the Auburn game. And he said that a lot of the old heads view that rivalry in a higher standard than the Iron Bowl. And I would just like to point that out. The greatest coach in college football history agrees with me. But, I mean, do you have any response to that? Because I know you ended up agreeing with me.
Yeah, I mean, when you won 2 of the last 3, it's a lot more even now.
Yeah. And the other thing was there's just the amount of Alabama fans that made it into that stadium. I told you Saturday night, a generous estimation would be 5,000. And that's super generous. That's like if I was colorblind generous. But
Well, at least one football team in Tennessee doesn't have a problem keeping opposing fans away.
Yeah. And I was so proud of the fan base for, sticking with the team. I mean, during the first half, I mean, there was a few moments where there was boo birds, but for the most part, we were still into the game and got loud. And then the last thing I wanted to say, how cool is the cigar tradition? Like, I was sitting there after Wilbrook secured that interception and just looking around the upper deck in the entire stadium, and you could see lighters flicking off. It was just a surreal moment because I wasn't really paying attention to that in 2022 because my eyes were focused on the field and my eyes were watery anyway. I couldn't really see much. I kind of blacked out. But to be in that moment and see the lighters flicking and the smoke starting to roll, and then smoking a cigar heading down the ramps to leave the stadium and seeing no smoking signs and, flipping them off as I walk by, and then to pass all the security guards and them not say a damn word. I mean, it's just one of the coolest traditions in any rivalry.
Yeah, it is cool. And the one thing I will say, though, the people that ripped pieces of the field off are losers.
Oh, my God.
Like, that's so lame. Don't do that. They ripped the turf out of the power tee. Like, that's really stupid.
I mean, from what I heard in the post-game shows I listened to, the field already looked like a sandbox during the game. And then the field rush happened, which we were against. I really don't feel as strongly as I did before it happened. But, we had a, high caliber, highly advertised, highly attended concert on that field a month ago. And then we're going to trample it and rip it up. I hope the field looks good in 2 weeks.
Well, here's my thing about the Ford. We'll get off after this, but my thing about the field storming is, when does it end, though? Like, are we going to do this every time we beat Bama at home? Like, are we only going to do it these 2 times? Like, it just seems unnecessary to me. Like, yeah, you do it the first time. Like, it had been how long since we beat Alabama? Like, yeah, you do it then. But are we going to do it every year from here on out that we beat them? Like, if Alabama goes 5-7 one year, are we going to do it then? Like,
I don't know, man.
I think that's kind of lame. But at least people care, though. I mean, at least people want to do that, I guess, and it makes good memories. But
yeah, I've come around on it since Thursday night.
You were totally right, by the way, about Clemson. They do storm the field. They stormed the field after they beat Virginia, dude.
I know. I was.
That's embarrassing.
I know. At least they're not them. But the answer to that is probably it won't happen again. And one of the rumors that I saw was that the recruits in the north end zone were the first ones to rush the field.
I mean, if you get to storm the field as a recruit, how are you not going to commit here?
That's what I'm saying, and that's
they
why
saw that wild ass crowd. Which, by the way, Josh Pate also said that when Neyland is at its best, it's the best venue in college football, and I think obviously we agree.
Yeah, but to your point about the recruits, like you said, to see that environment, to be on the field, if you don't commit to Tennessee at that point, I don't like. It's just a crazy scene, even when there's not a field rush. And for them to initiate it, I know the students are probably going to do it anyway. And that's why I kind of came around on it. Like, there's freshmen and sophomores as students now that didn't get to do that 2 years ago, and they wanted to be a part of something like that. But to your point, when does it stop? I don't know. But I just don't want to suck out any happiness anybody gained from that. So I've chilled out on that a little bit.
Okay. Well, fair enough. You'd obviously rather have the opportunities to storm the field, so I can't complain too much.
100%. But you got anything else tonight, buddy?
Well, I mean, I don't give an entire damn about the whole state of Alabama, but other than that, no.
Go Vols.
Go Vols.